Sometimes Shipman would claim he arrived at a patient's house and found them dead or breathing their last breath.
Damn, no one like put two and two together. It's like, wow, shit, man. It seems like every time you go to an old person's house, they die. That's weird. Probably a ghost or something. The man who killed 215 people and no one noticed.
Video, we came across a lot of websites that couldn't be accessed.
Here, where's the code? Let's get the code. Code unpredictable, 3 months free.
The description and using the promo code unpredictable to get your first 3 months free.
I think Earth picked up an asteroid in its gravitational pull that we technically have a second moon now. Don't know if it's gonna have an effect on the planet or not, but oh well. Hopefully the just big comet will just come and just, you know, make us all homeless.
Christopher West had received a phone call on March 6, 1995. He'd been expecting one from his mother all day, so he picked up the phone without checking who it was. He says, "Hi, Mom." But he was surprised when his mother didn't respond. Instead, he heard an old man's voice. Although it's not what he expected, the voice sounded familiar. It was his mother's doctor, Dr. Harold Shipman. He replies,
it's just the facial hair. Like when I glanced at it, it looked like Robin Williams in Good Will Hunting for a second. Don't you disrespect. I'm not disrespecting Robin Williams. Sorry that I randomly, like, it bleeped into my brain for a second.
Around 15 years earlier, she'd expressed discomfort with her new hips, for which she had a doctor, Dr. Harold Shipman. Christopher West, in shock, responded, "You're joking." To which Dr. Shipman had said, "No, Mr. West, I don't joke about things like this." Dr. Shipman explained that he had come to do a routine checkup in Maria West's home. He could do.
So I'm just guessing. Is this like a doctor that helps old people, but just like quietly murders them with like poison or some shit? But he gets away with it because he's a doctor and they're all old?
Dr. Shipman had said that if he resuscitated her now, she'd, quote, be a cabbage. Dr. Shipman didn't call an ambulance, nor did he call the police.
So you basically just said, yeah, I could save her life, but I mean, is it really worth it though? Like, do I really have to save her life? I mean... What do I get out of saving her life?
Frederick Shipman was born in 1946. As the second of 3 children, growing up in a working-class family in Nottingham, Shipman often found himself playing sports like rugby and track and field. Although, most sources say that he didn't have many friends in school.
So he's a loser.
By his last year in high school, Shipman had become a semi-accomplished athlete and was bright academically. However, when Shipman had turned 17, his mother, whom he'd gotten particularly close to, had gotten lung cancer. It's impossible to know exactly what Shipman was feeling during this pivotal time in his life, but sources say that between his mother's episodes of agony and pain, Shipman had seen how morphine could calm her down, an observation that we'll come back to later on. Shipman's mother would later succumb to her illness, only 2 years before he would be admitted into the Leeds School of Medicine at 19 years old. During his time at university, Shipman would meet his soon-to-be wife, Primrose Oxtoby, whom he had gotten pregnant.
That is a name. Primrose Oxtoby. That is such a British, like you can't even say that normally. You gotta say it like Primrose Oxtoby. You can't just say Primrose Oxtoby. It's gotta have that like English stank to it. Primrose Oxtoby.
Then married. He would later graduate from the university in 1970.
Cool name though.
Getting an internship in a nearby hospital, all while continuing to study obstetrics and gynecology. After a few years of hospital work, Shipman would move to Todmorden to work in a medical center and hopefully become a family doctor. At the
Where's New England? What the fuck is a kilometer?
time, this position was called a general practitioner. But it was in the city where Shipman would start to unravel. His colleagues had always seen him as hardworking and enthusiastic. He was popular with the patients and always seemed to take initiative when needed. It was this status that landed Shipman in charge of ordering controlled drugs for the medical center. But this position didn't last long. Within a year, Shipman was under suspicion for ordering unusually large quantities of pethidine from local pharmacies. Drug inspectors and squads had initially dismissed Shipman because of the high praise he'd received from his colleagues, but it became obvious when Shipman started having blackouts and seizures that he had indeed been stealing the drug and abusing it. Upon the revelation that Shipman, the man who'd been so highly regarded in the medical center, was addicted to drugs, he resigned and was fined around £600. But because his crime hadn't affected any of his patients...
Wait, hold up. What? Who was 600 pounds? I ironically thought they said someone was 600 pounds. Oh God. Oops. Oopsies.
Pounds.
Oops.
But because his
I got America on the brain, man.
crime hadn't affected any of his patients, he was allowed to continue
What the
handling,
fuck is a
prescribing,
kilometer,
and
chat?
even administering
Where's
controlled
New
drugs,
England?
which, as we'll soon see, was a grave mistake. Looking back at his time at Todmorden,
I was like, damn,
patients
he
under
gained a lot of
Shipman's care
weight.
had also died under strange circumstances. Now, it's impossible to say what exactly was happening in the years Shipman was working in Todmorden, or if all the patients that died under Shipman's care were his fault. At the time, nobody even noticed, but years later, this detail would raise eyebrows. After his first run-in with the law, Shipman was free to pursue another job, this time at Donnybrook Medical Center in Hyde. During his time here, Shipman established his position as a general practitioner or family doctor and built trusting relationships with his patients, even doing an interview for a documentary in 1982.
If you can stay in the community, receive your treatment in the community, with your family around you, your usual friends, then this all adds to the speed of recovery from the illness.
However, in 1992, Shipman then started his own surgery, which is the generic UK term for where a local doctor sees his patients, but just for clarity, we'll refer to it as his medical practice.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's not
They called it
entirely
a
known
surgery.
why Shipman quit his established job at the Donnybrook House to start his own practice. Colleagues later said in witness statements that there was a disagreement between the partners, or he thought he could do it better himself. Whatever
I
the
have my own methods.
case was, in 1992, Shipman moved to his new practice, taking his client
Pethide was a synthetic drug that suppressed the cough reflex, also called Demerol. Wait, hold up. I need that.
list along with him.
I need
In
that.
the following years, Shipman's practice would thrive. By many, he was seen as a caring and attentive doctor, not only because of the quality of his treatment, but also because he would visit elderly patients in their homes, something that was considered old school at the time. By 1998, Shipman was considered the best doctor in Hyde. But anyone who really paid attention to Shipman's daily routine would notice that something was off.
Sounds like a good title.
Receptionists who worked at Shipman's practice have said that he would usually show up at around 8:30 a.m. before seeing patients and filling out paperwork until lunch, which was usually from 12 to 1 p.m. After
Alright.
lunch, he would usually visit an elderly patient, preferably one that was living alone, either by appointment or just checking up on them. During these
Okay.
visits, Shipman would claim and most likely tell the patient that he was just taking blood samples or providing prescriptions. For example, in the case of Maria West, the 81-year-old woman we talked about at the start of the video, Shipman claimed that he was just checking up on her to see how she was doing with the pethidine he'd prescribed earlier. During the course of these visits, though, the patient would sometimes quickly and strangely fall unconscious and die. Although, sometimes Shipman would claim he arrived at a patient's house and found them dead or breathing their last breath.
Damn. No one, no one like put two and two together. It's like, wow, shit, man. It seems like every time you go to an old person's house, they die. That's weird. Probably a ghost or something. Couldn't be you, right?
Sometimes, Shipman would finish the visit and claim the patient was doing fine, before being called back later the same day to find out that they had died. For example, Maria West had died in 1995, while Shipman claims he went to his car. Later, he said that he never went to his car and that she died simply while his back was turned, but that's another topic. Likewise, Irene Turner in 1990.
It's like, all right, I'm going to turn away. Okay, don't die on me. All right, I'm going to... God, again, man, with these old people, stop dying. I just looked away for 1 second and you're dead. Can't save you either. No, even though I'm a doctor and know how to save people who are in the process of dying or might be going through something that could potentially kill them. But man, that sucks.
1996 was found dead by Shipman in her bed.
Not suspicious at all.
Laura Wagstaff, 1997, dead after Shipman went to his car and came back.
What's in his car?
1998, dead while Shipman was leaving her house after a visit. It's safe to say that it became common for Shipman's patients to die abruptly, so much so that residents of the town had started calling him Dr. Death.
And no one thought this was suspicious at all. Did y'all just think it was aliens?
Afterwards,
Probably.
Shipman would almost
Probably
never call
aliens.
an ambulance or police, typically claiming that there was nothing he could do or that the death was completely expected. After signing cremation forms and death certificates, Shipman would promptly leave his practice at 4 p.m.
Well, time to go kill another old lady. Well, 4 o'clock. Time to murder.
Although Dr. Shipman was considered a top-tier family doctor, people had begun to notice the number of seemingly healthy elderly patients that were dying in Shipman's care. One of these people was Dr. Linda Reynolds, who had been working as a general practitioner at the medical center just across the street from Shipman for 2 years. The two medical centers had formed an agreement to co-sign all of Dr. Shipman's cremation forms, but Reynolds had begun to get suspicious about the unusually large number of forms that were being signed. Not only this, but because Shipman would frequently show up to his patients' houses, he was also present at the time of death for an unusual number of his
It took that long for someone to think that was weird?
patients. So, Reynolds voiced this observation with her colleagues, and to her surprise, they had actually been discussing this issue for some time. They noticed that most of Shipman's deceased patients were female, living alone, and all found by the doctor himself. The workers at the Brooks surgery now had an interesting dilemma. Do they speak out about this observation and make the horrible accusation that it implies? Or do they ignore their suspicions and potentially let the deadliest serial killer of all time walk free? They debated any potential explanations about why Shipman's patients might be dying more than others. Maybe it was because he had a large patient list, or maybe it was because he had a larger than average number of elderly people to tend to. Eventually, and with much anxiety, Dr. Reynolds had called the Stockport coroner. The coroner later recalled his conversation with Reynolds. Dr. Reynolds told me that they were concerned that the place of death, time of death, and presence of Shipman all seemed strange. She said during our conversation that there were two explanations for the high number of deaths. Either Shipman was a very good doctor who called on his patients without an appointment on a regular basis, and therefore, as a matter of coincidence, happened to be present at the time of death. Alternatively,
psychic.
that he was killing his patients. But by this point, Reynolds was still afraid that she was just overreacting. She expressed her concerns that, if the result of the investigation was that Shipman was a caring doctor and he got to know that Reynolds had shopped him, it would ruin their professional relationship. And so, a very discreet investigation was carried out, but within a month it was concluded that because of the lack of evidence and motive, and the fact that most causes of death were consistent with their medical records, they had no grounds for continuing an investigation. Until Shipman started getting sloppy.
Uh-oh. Shitmans.
Angela Woodruff had received a phone call from a policeman in Hyde. She'd been told that her mother, 71-year-old Kathleen Grundy, had been found by two men from her luncheon club after she failed to show up. Curiously, the door to her house wasn't locked, and the men that found her could walk right in. I walked into the lounge and saw Mrs. Grundy lay on the settee. She was fully clothed with even her shoes on and appeared to be sleeping. I went over to her and tried to rouse her, but immediately saw that she was very gray in color, and I realized that she must be dead. Many who knew Kathleen Grundy had
creepy.
described her as leading an extraordinarily active life. Her daughter later said that one could easily imagine that she was 20 years younger. But naturally, upon receiving this devastating news, Woodruff and her husband had called her mother's doctor to find out what happened.
Shipman.
Shipman spoke
Dr.
vaguely about the
Shipman.
death, saying that Grundy had been complaining of chest pains and indigestion for the past couple days, and said that an autopsy wouldn't reveal much. Shipman had visited Grundy that morning at her house, but he'd said
This
it
cop seems very adamant about not trying to find a solution to their problems for being a doctor.
was just to take a blood sample. On the death certificate, Shipman wrote old age as the cause of death. Now,
Come on, man. Like, you're not even trying anymore.
Shipman.
What the fuck?
Woodruff,
Bro!
confused as to where this rushed and poorly typed document had come from, she decided to talk to the witnesses who'd signed it. And
What
after
the
figuring
hell?
out that their
Totally not suspicious at all, man. All these old people die and just give all this shit to shitmans? Totally not weird, man.
signatures had been forged, only then did she suspect that Shipman might be behind it. And so, she reported her suspicions to police, where it quickly became known that the same doctor had been suspected of foul play just a few months earlier, back when Reynolds had voiced her suspicions. So, a few days later, police had obtained a warrant to exhume Grundy's body as well as search Shipman's practice and home. In his practice, police found an old typewriter, the one used to write Grundy's will, and upon toxicology tests of Grundy's body, levels of morphine were found that were consistent with an overdose. At this point,
there it
reporters had
is.
started to show up to Shipman's surgery.
I had a
Sorry,
feeling.
Doctor. I'll come and stand where you'd like me to stand.
It's very good of you. I do appreciate it. Would it be possible for you to sort of come and get something out of your car
No.
and then go back in?
I've been advised to stand and let you take a photograph and then go away. And I'm sure you've had enough time to take a decent
Are
photograph.
you gonna, is it possible for you just to
Thank
say
you.
anything
I'm
at
going
all?
back into surgery to do my surgery.
But you have said you have
Thank
nothing to hide, sir.
This, paired with the police's discovery of Shipman's previous criminal history, led him to be arrested in September 1998, 3 months after Grundy's death. Upon realizing that other patients of Shipman had also died in similar ways,
But like, what's the purpose? Literally just getting the money, the old people?
police in Warwickshire, and now the Greater Manchester Police, exhumed 8 more bodies in the next 5 months. After multiple no-comment interviews with Shipman, he was charged with the murders of 15 of his patients, 9 that had been exhumed and 6 that had previously been cremated. Dr. Shipman's trial, which was now a citywide spectacle for the people of Hyde, began around a year after Grundy's murder. The prosecution had to prove that Shipman had indeed murdered these patients, but what proved to be much harder was establishing a motive.
Sadly, nothing that's happened here, nor can happen in the future, can bring about my mum and all the other victims. We hope we can now have the space and the time to remember my mum as she was, a happy, active, caring, energetic, loving person whom we miss so much.
There are many people who feel very, very guilty that they didn't do something about or report it. And whenever you say to them, well, why didn't you? They say, well, who would believe me?
Yep. Yep. Welcome, Lemon Wedge.
In all 9 bodies that had been exhumed, there was strong medical evidence that the patients had suffered morphine poisoning shortly before their death. This, along with evidence that Shipman was with these patients on the day of their deaths and that he couldn't explain the presence of morphine in their bodies,
what do they
led
need
the jury
a motive
to believe
for?
that Shipman had indeed.
Yeah, I feel like finding a motive is just like extra shit, you know what I mean? Because like half the time, killers just kill just because they can, you know? Like they just get a kick out of killing people, right? Like there doesn't even need to be a motive half the time.
Indeed injected them with either morphine or diamorphine. The reason for the distinction is because when diamorphine is injected into the body, it turns into morphine in about 30 seconds. So, it's impossible to say whether morphine in a body was originally injected as morphine or diamorphine. But an assumption can be made after taking a look at the diamorphine register from the years Shipman was active. His name shows up more than a few times. However, for the patients that had been cremated, medical evidence couldn't be taken. But because of the circumstances around their deaths, the jury was convinced Shipman played a role. Then comes the problem of motive. The murder of Kathleen Grundy was of course motivated by monetary gain because of the forged will. But in all of the murders, there's no evidence that Shipman had taken anything, money or otherwise. There's also no evidence that the motive was related to any sadistic or erotic desires, as Shipman hadn't touched the bodies after he injected them with diamorphine. He would occasionally set the scene up as if the patient had died unexpectedly, but it seemed that was only so people wouldn't get suspicious. Psychiatrists who've studied Shipman's actions have suggested that he might have had an obsessive personality, or poor self-esteem that was masked by arrogance and self-confidence.
What does that have to do with killing old ladies?
They suggest that Shipman might have had a need to control people or events, and that the death of his mother as a teenager might have instilled a fear of death, and the need to control it, thus killing other people as a result. According to a woman who worked for Shipman as a home help, he'd asked her whether or not she got a buzz from finding people deceased in their homes. Perhaps our assumption is wrong, and Shipman did indeed get a sort of sadistic pleasure out of these murders.
Personally, yeah. Like the thing is just like people like killing. Like, you know, some people just enjoy the kill.
The psychiatrists who came to these conclusions stressed that because Shipman didn't participate in any psychological or psychiatric assessments, we'll never really know what was going on in Shipman's head and what exactly he got out of these murders. Another interesting move.
Little oink.
Lemonade.
With 2,000 bits. Thank you so much.
By Shipman was the forged will. The previously mentioned psychiatrists found that it was hard to believe that Shipman really thought he could get away with Grundy's estate, especially with such an obvious, badly written forgery.
He got away with it for so long.
They say that he might have had a subconscious desire to be caught. Maybe the pressure was getting more and more intense, and he needed to find a way to stop himself or absolve himself of guilt.
He sentenced Shipman to 15 concurrent life sentences.
God damn.
And in your case, the judge said, life must mean life. My recommendation, Mr. Justice Forbes said, is that you spend the rest of your life in prison.
Good.
With that, Dr. Harold Shipman was taken down to the cell.
In the end, Shipman pleaded not guilty to his crimes, but was eventually...
What? You have the gall and the audacity to actually say that not guilty?
given 15 life sentences.
What a
one for each
fucking
patient
piece
he
of
was charged
shit.
for, plus 4 years for the forged will. But as the scope of the cases widened, it became clear that Shipman's kill count wasn't just these 15 people. Reports later made by the British government have tried to come to a final kill count, but it's proven hard because of the lack of evidence for certain cases, and some documents being lost to time. It's unlikely that Shipman had murdered any patients before his time in Todmorden, where he most likely killed Mrs. Eva Lyons, but his motives remain unclear. Some of the other deaths during that period are very suspicious, but not enough to be sure
I remember half of his patients didn't even believe that he did it.
that Shipman had killed them.
Well, that's the thing. When you're so trusted by so many people.
During his time
like,
at Donnybrook and Hyde, he killed 71 people. But after he
Jesus.
started his own practice from 1992 to 98, he'd killed a total of 143
My
people.
God!
With a total suspected body count of almost 215 people over 2 decades, Harold Shipman is arguably the most prolific modern serial killer in the world based on confirmed killings.
What the fuck?
In 2004, having spent 4 years in prison, Shipman hung himself in his cell using his bed sheets.
What a surprise! What a goddamn surprise! Always. They always do that, man. Always. I mean, the only like silver lining is at least like the people he killed didn't have like horrifically painful deaths or something like that. But Man, what a fucking... They're all cowards, always. Jesus Christ. Wow. Wonder how it started. If he went straight to killing women, or he did stuff when he was younger, but was never caught. I mean, it's probably a process of things.
Now it's time to walk away. I hope you enjoyed your stay. Did you laugh or cry or maybe subscribed? I'll thank you either way. You know I will miss you. I hope you return. Tell your friend or your mother to get me more views, please.